him.
Fantastic start. Fantastic.
What did I walk into?
Oh, God. This is Plato 1, Final Gravity's first podcast, El Numero Uno.
Plato 1, Episode 1.
Set 1.
Version 1.
It's our first try.
Yeah.
We're doing this for the first time.
Recording 1.
all of the ones. The first. All of the firsts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I am your host this evening, Cuzzin T, and joining me this and every, hopefully, week every episode for the foreseeable future. Let me correct that. Not every week, every episode. Time frame is yet to be determined, but here again with the Viking Peaches, who's kindly joining us from Bend, Oregon, from his trailer once again. Some of the best social distancing you can probably do is being in a trailer by yourself.
Not wrong.
Josh, you don't come one step closer. Not one step closer to me.
You all may remember us from a previously known podcast known as Drink and Think, and a guest that had frequented many an episode is with us now as a permanent member of the Jib Jab jawings that are going to happen here on Final Gravity. Say hello to the people, Groovy Bear.
How's it going, y'all?
Yeah. CJ in the house.
In the house. In the house. Josh in the trailer. CJ's in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost set up in my parents' house, but, didn't need them walking in on me doing weird things.
You're on the air. Doing.
Yeah.
What were they going to walk in on you on that you're not already comfortable with putting through a microphone?
Or,
you know what? Or
doing in front of your buddies on video.
Gloss over that one. I don't even want to know. You are just twisted shit.
You know what, man?
It's a valid point.
Mom, I swear, I was just podcasting.
I'm not judging him. I'm not saying he can't whip it out if he wants to. I'm just saying, what was he going to do that we could see that they couldn't? You know?
That's a very, what's the word I'm like Dali way to look at it. It's very bendy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Salvador Dali.
Yeah. That's what that comment was. Very, very, very nicely played. Very nicely played.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Getting off to an early start.
We're trying hard.
We are trying very hard.
Batting for the fences.
So welcome to the first episode. We are going to give you a roundabout of who we are and what we're going to do here. For as little explanation as I can give without telling everyone's fucking story, I suppose.
Well, what are we going to do here? Before we hear about all of our stories, what is the mission here? Because I'm still confused on it.
Well, I feel like this podcast, I wanted to gear, or the making of this podcast before it became this podcast and sitting down and talking with you guys, I was looking for more of a beer-centered, educational type podcast than just a rant about the random craft beers from all over the country or whatever, which there's nothing wrong with that as well. You know what I mean? It got away from the main idea that I wanted to do, and what I want to do is taste beer, talk about the science and knowledge and information and history behind beer, and then what is happening to craft beer and how it's associated to what's going on in the world currently. You know, I mean, and that's going to change month to month, especially given current circumstances, which we're going to get into on Plato 3. That's not for tonight's discussion. So before we we run off.
Yeah.
Before we run off on a side note, I'm just going to nip that in the butt real quick.
Yeah.
Last podcast, we had a tendency to tangent.
No tangents here. No tangents. We are
No,
linear. This is a linear podcast.
This linear podcast. So that's kind of the idea that I wanted to convey to you guys, and we had some really good discussions, and then we sat down and had a couple of video chats, and we all had really good ideas and really good input and feedback for everyone's ideas, and now here we are doing number uno.
Now we're here.
Yep. Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, what do we do now? We haven't done this before, so what's our next?
I mean,
Jesus, man.
I'm just keeping the conversation going. What are we all drinking?
I am drinking one of my classic favorites, Sierra Nevada Pale.
I am also drinking one of your Sierra Nevada Pales. And that's because I got here late and didn't have time to grab the cold beer I planned. So I grabbed warm beer instead, and it's cooling down.
Well, that's perfectly fine. And we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Well, that's
we
perfectly fine.
Josh?
I, too, am drinking a pale ale, but a significantly different one. The Mirror Pond Pale Ale from Deschutes. One of my classic favorites.
Very nice.
Yeah, pretty much just what we had in the fridge because I don't want to go to the store and get sick.
Times are tough for the craft beer drinker.
Yeah, that's why I go as far as the gas station to get beer or to my refrigerator, really, when beer's done.
I've been making beer runs like once a week or so, restocking on Corona and Mirror Ponds, and that's pretty much what we're keeping in the fridge right now.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
And a lot of Jameson.
And I'm hoping to have about 10 gallons worth in, I don't know, 10 days,
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
give or take.
Way safer to make your own beer right now than go buy it.
Yeah, for real. Holy shit, I didn't even think about that.
Which is a good segue into talking about who we are.
Yeah.
And where we get off trying to teach people about beer.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Who are these fucking assholes?
I haven't gotten off yet, for the record. I am still waiting to get off.
Well, I mean, I feel like that's a personal issue you need to take care of on your own time.
It's not an issue. I'm not mad about it. I'm hoping it happens, but I'm not rushing anything.
Okay, I still feel like personal time.
Copy. You try and open yourself up to somebody. You try and show somebody a piece of your life.
I wasn't going to get you off.
I wasn't asking you to.
Oh, I thought.
No.
I mean, why else? Why else do you open up to people?
No. What? Well, you should edit that part out that you said right there. That could be used against you pretty quickly. I mean, I would never.
This is why I got into.
Thomas, is there something I need to know about our relationship?
This is why I get into arguments with.
Wait,
women.
he was always nice to. What?
Just kidding. Just kidding. I will always make the deviant joke when it makes itself avail.
When they go low, right?
Oh yeah.
When they go low.
Go lower. Yeah. He saw that line, just kept right on running. Well, I mean, I'm the host, so I guess I should just direct this to the point of, what are you doing here, CJ?
You asked me to be here, Tom.
I did. I guess more the why did I ask you to be here, CJ?
Copy that. Well, I thought we were segueing into why you were going to be here first because you were the host and we talked about homebrewing, but I'll jump in. I have been into craft beer since probably 2011, 2012. And I was cooking at the time, and I remember somebody asking me if I wanted to join them for a homebrewing session, which I was like, absolutely. And from that instant along, it was just like, wow, this is a whole new pathway toward creativity and toward exploring flavor, which working in the culinary industry I was very into. And so through my next 5 years of cooking, I'd be a home brewer, and then I managed to finagle my way into being the chef of a brewery, and then quickly finagled my way into, well, I don't want to professionally cook anymore, I want to brew. And so I started cellaring. And I have been a professional brewer for the last 4 years. And I now am locally employed here at out in Columbia Falls at Backslope Brewing. And I am
shameless plugs. No, I'm just
oh,
kidding.
shameless plug. Absolutely, I'm going to plug the brewery. Totally.
No, yeah, absolutely, man. And not just because you're sitting here, but I remember. Not to pull us off
shamelessly
topic.
plugging.
No. I've seen I've tasted the evolution of Backslope's beer over the last 4 years, and the forward progressive changes that you guys have made.
Yeah, we're very excited.
Yeah.
But I am here because I enjoy craft beer, because I enjoy drinking it, I enjoy sharing it, I enjoy talking about it, I enjoy educating people about it. And I think that, like anything creative or agricultural or artistic, it's important. There's something about it and something about the labor that goes into it and the love that goes into it that's really fulfilling and important. So that's why I'm here.
I am.
I'm also stoned, and it's 4:20, and I just kind of wandered into this house, and there was microphones. So,
What?
Yeah, shit happens.
Wait a minute! You just said I asked you to be here.
right,
How
I
did
know
you
that
just randomly wander in?
that joke was run. Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Tried to tie them, didn't work. They won't all work. They won't all stick.
No, I'm not going to let you have that call back.
Just keep throwing shit at the fence, and eventually something will stick to it.
Fence, wall.
That's my motto. That's my strategy.
Hey, if you throw shit at the floor, it always sticks.
It always sticks. It's true.
Oh, that's funny. And then myself, I suppose. Sierra Nevada was my first craft beer that kind of got me intrigued into out all words, but I never really pursued anything beyond just trying different lightly hopped pales and stuff like that. I come from a region of just vats of Bud Light and Budweiser and shit like that. The craft beer scene in New Jersey has only really blown up, and I would say probably the last decade. And when I grew up drinking there, the decade before that, it was still just you went to the store, you got Yingling, and that was it. My old man had Sierra Nevada and a bunch of other random shit that his buddy would get because he was into craft beer. And then after moving to Montana and visiting the local craft breweries and finding people that are just handing me here, try this, try that, try this, try that. My cousin, mostly it was just what we were talking about when you first got here, Mirror Pond, Goose Island, Sierra Nevada, and Founders Centennial. We're just here, try these. You'll probably like these. And then it opened up to other things and this and that. And then an ex-girlfriend asked me one day, she's like, so I got this, I'm into making beer. I've got this beer kit. Do you want to make beer? And I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds cool or whatever. So we made this single gallon extract batch, one of those little kit deals. Mm-hmm. And then 3 years later, it turned into having several $1,000s worth of homebrewing equipment and going from gallon batches to, half barrel batches and all grain recipes and designing and getting information from people like yourself and CJ and other brewers and people just around the valley that are super helpful with trying to help people move forward. I asked certain brewers certain questions based on that brewer's personality type. I'll ask certain brewers about equipment. How do I map this out? How do I get this to run right? How do I set this up? And then other brewers, I'll have no problem asking recipe or ingredient help or water profile help or this or that or whatever. And then it's turned into this mass science project, basically. It's it's that chemistry set that you get when you're a kid, suddenly when you're 37 years old turns into a full-size chemistry set, basically.
Yeah, totally.
That makes alcohol.
Totally.
That makes beer. And that's how I ended up here. I met Josh a couple years ago. We worked together, and then he lived at my house or outside my house in his trailer for 6 to 8 months. We started another podcast together, and he just helped me out with a couple of brews and stuff, and we started that other podcast, and then that all fell apart, and then we asked you to join, and that's how I kind of got here.
Yeah.
Well, that is 2 parts of the pyramid right there. Now we got to hear.
And
It is, yeah.
for the final, to complete the hypotenuse.
Well played. Well played.
I kind of round out the trio. We've got CJ, the expert, who is, actively a brewer. So kind of the big knowledge base there. You got Thomas, who's like learning, that craft home brewer, who's like working and aspiring towards those kinds of goals, and very, very actively learning and reading and researching every day.
Like a fucking sponge right now.
What?
I said I'm like a fucking sponge right now, just absorbing information.
Yeah, why'd you have to say it so dirty the first time, though? The second time was like a statement. The first time was like, I'm like a fucking sponge right now.
Because it was meant to sound dirty the first time. When he said what, I was just like,
what the fuck did he say?
I'm going to start remote doing this if you keep doing this shit. It's either I'm going to climax or it's just going to be awkward.
This is why my mom shouldn't be walking in the room.
Black or white.
Okay, well, that's a good example of that. That's a good callback on your end. But by the way, clean up your mess before you leave. I don't give a shit.
But also...
Anyways, but yeah, so to round out the pyramid, I'm probably the least experienced and knowledgeable as far as beer goes, but as far as learning and knowledge and growth, something I've always loved. But also, I do have a solid background in beer. I was born and raised in Bend, Oregon, which, as most people know, is a mecca for beer creation and enjoyment. Probably the first craft beer I ever had was the Mirror Pond Pale Ale, and I continue to drink the shit out of it to this day. I worked at 10 Barrel when I was in high school and for a while in college. Bartended and managed down at a bar downtown, just down the street from Deschutes Brewery. Then eventually packed my shit up into a trailer and moved to Montana, which is where I met these hooligans. And Thomas was doing his home brewing thing, and he enlisted my help to help him lift all the heavy things and be an extra set of hands and eyes while he's brewing. And kind of
he was very helpful.
Yeah.
I had some back problems over the summer. Josh was very helpful.
Yeah. So I had done a few homebrew batches before that, like when I was in Bend, and continued to learn and grow, and started doing the Drink and Think podcast, and that just kept inspiring me to keep learning. And I feel like between the knowledge base that you two bring and the curiosity and questions that I might ask that the average person wouldn't quite know, that you guys might just gloss over thinking people know, kind of creates a nice balance.
I'd agree with that. I also want to point out that as you were telling that story, I'm pretty sure that you and I really kind of first truly met. I mean, we'd met in passing before. It was on the first Drink and Think podcast that I was on, in which in the back of the sadly right now, which is closed, Montana Tap House, we did vertical flights of Deschutes.
Oh, that's right.
Was it the Imperial Porter or the Imperial Stout? What did we do? Did we do a
No,
Piss?
it was the
It was Blackbutte. It was
the Blackbutte Porter, the Barrel Age series.
Yep. We did vertical flights of that. We did vertical flights of that. And that's what we sounded like at the end of the night.
Oh, yeah, it got ugly fast.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that got really... But no, that was, well, also, honestly...
That was honestly one of the funnest episodes, or the most fun, whatever is grammatically proper.
Funner. Funner is actually the grammatically
It was one of the more funner episodes that we've done.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, the more funnister.
That sounds sinister.
Well, and I think
like Joker.
That episode honestly kind of keyed in a lot to what we're trying to do now with this new thing we got going on, because... I know I got a lot of feedback just saying that they loved the education that came with that episode, because we did spend a lot of time talking about different beer profiles and the way it's built, and we got a lot more technical, and it was a lot more structured. So now moving forward and trying to make a new podcast out of where things ended up, it's, kind of wanted to harken back to that kind of a feeling.
Well, let's get loose and bust out some Imperial Porters then, guys.
So, welcome, welcome, fuckers, to Final Gravity. This is us. You got a little bit of our background. The Viking Peaches, Groovy Bear, Cuzzin T. Sorry, it is 420, and I smoked a bunch of weed before this show.
And I hope all of our listeners did too. And I don't judge you if you don't. If you don't believe in the magic herb, that's okay.
That's
it is
cool.
your loss. But I'm pretty stoned right now, and I'm pretty happy about it.
Just remember, it's becoming recreationally accepted by governments around the world. And if you read, if you're a God-loving or fearing person, whichever way you want to look at what he does to people when they don't obey him, I believe it's a Genesis verse that says he has given us all of the seed-bearing plants and herbs to use, which thank you, Cypress Hill, for that little reference nugget for everybody. So even God says, smoke that shit.
There you go. And I don't want to...
The quote, I think it's the Hold Up, in the song I Think God Smokes Weed. He's assuming all the actions of my own body, therefore every time I rock the ganj, so does he.
I mean, let me... Before we get, I don't want to get too far into this. I just want to make a quick point about the fact that there is no way, in my opinion, I'm gonna put that in there real quick. Oxford commas on either side. That God does not smoke weed. Look at humanity and what a fucking hilarious mess we are. He's smoking one of those fucking vape pens.
Oh, he's got something so dialed up there.
Yeah.
So fixed up there.
Yeah, it like filters through the fucking clouds. I don't
said
know.
he, and that's because that's the way the Bible says it. I don't believe that, though. I'm just going to plug that real quick. God's
I
definitely
bet.
she.
No. I bet God is a woman with a dick.
Please edit that out. Please edit that comment.
Oh, shit. Did I meet God that one night in the alley in Portland?
What, man?
Oh, man. I'm not saying it can't be. I'm just saying.
No.
Or it's a dude with a vagina.
Someone's going to take something the wrong way there.
You know, I'm more than happy to talk theology and God and everything at some point.
We're doing that on our other podcast. We're doing that on our other podcast.
I just want to point out.
3 Men in Ropes, which starts tomorrow. But today is a beard podcast.
I just want to point out that there is a heavy dose of comedy on this show, and if you take anything other than beer talk literally, that's your fault.
Fair enough.
And
no tangents.
Beer talk is our opinions.
No tangents. A lot of comedy. No tangents. Very linear comedy.
I mean, you can make all the comedy you want. I'm just saying, when it comes to like specific educational beer talk and tastings.
We do say fuck on this show.
A lot.
Tons.
Oh, fuck, really?
Sure. Yeah, it's okay. I was told that. It's okay.
Yeah, no. This is an adult. We are all above
an
age to present this to people that we don't have to worry about them listening.
That's so good. That's so good. I'm terrified that somewhere some 8-year-old is like logging on soon, and he's just like...
Yeah, I'm sure you were really worried about like an 8-year-old.
No, I'm not. I'm not. 7-year-old, yes. An 8-year-old, that's adulthood now. It needs to be considered adulthood.
Yeah.
They are ready for the modern world.
Fuck them.
Fucking survive.
Join the workforce.
Just survive, dude. Just survive.
Get on unemployment like the rest of us are right now.
I had a friend with an 8-year-old daughter, and the rule was she was allowed to use cuss words as long as she used them right and not at school. Right?
That's
so like if she used them right, she's like, well, fuck it, you did that right.
Pretty fucking much. So we'll go into the tasting, I think, because I enjoy the shit out of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
All right, so what was the first time that you had Sierra Nevada Pale Ale? Can you remember the first time? Like literally the first? Like when your cherry was popped?
I have an idea.
We all have an idea of the first time. Let's talk about the real thing.
The first time I remember going to grab one because I wanted to drink it, or the first time I actually drank one, or the first time I was handed one, because those are two different experiences.
The time that you sipped it and it was like, whoa, yes. this is excellent. When was that time?
Beer.
Yeah.
Well, the first couple of times I tried beer, it was not good because my dad would give me like Coors Light and whatever shit beer that him and his buddies would drink while they were out fishing. And when it was in Maine, and they would bring some Sierra Nevada Pale with them. And then once I was old enough, and after that first 12-year-old sip of beer where you get the bed spins, like what the fuck is happening? Because you're 12 and you don't understand what life is yet. And then you're just like, oh, this is why people drink. But no, I remember it was probably in Maine where after, I think I was probably like 16 or 17. It was one of the last times I had gone to the fishing camp with my dad, and man, I feel like this story is not right. Fuck. It's something about us going fishing somewhere, and I asked him for a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and he was just like, oh shit, okay, because he had given me a few when I was younger, like 13, 14, when we would still be going to Maine, so that's where it happened.
Sure.
Wow, that was I apologize for that horrible.
It's the first episode. It's the first episode. We're shaking the wiggles out, man. We're figuring this out. It's beer. It's
Christ.
that easy. It's that easy. It's all good.
But
What? All right.
But I remember them always talking about moose drool all the fucking time because he used to fly out to West Yellowstone every year and fish in like Montana and other places and throughout Yellowstone Park, and they would always talk about moose drool, and I'm like, that sounds disgusting, and I still don't really like moose drool. No offense, Big Sky, you put out some really good shit otherwise.
Heard that.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to say, because I'm drinking your beer right now, your intro beer, that Sierra Nevada Pale, I mean, like, and we've talked about this before on Drink and Think, it's considered, the term we like to use is Godfather beer, but it's been around for a long time. It turned a lot of people on to craft beer. It's a really approachable pale ale. From a modern brewing perspective, like so many classics, does it hold up? Not necessarily to the modern palate or the modern performance, but from just a beer drinker standpoint, it's outstanding. Especially if you can get it fresh. It holds up.
You can't get the consistency out of, I would say, 40% of most beers that you get out of Sierra Nevada. Like, it tastes the same all the fucking time.
Yeah, and I hope, not to foreshadow, I hope at some point in time in our blocks that we talk about whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, or whether that matters.
I think,
but consistency from a package standpoint obviously matters a lot. Consistency in a brewing standpoint, it's its own thing. It can be very fluid. I believe that's a personal belief. But as a beer, as a straight pale ale, I mean, it is grainy. It is kind of malt forward, but it has a really wonderful citrus flavor to it that just, I mean, it's quaffable. It's fucking quaffable. So I'm going to I'll with you on that.
Yeah, there was a cheers to that.
We're not supposed to cheers in this time, but
whatever.
We're doing bottom of the glass,
Man,
so.
Yeah, we're good.
Just letting people know. We're being safe.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are like the social sort. You know, you guys have your circle of people you hang out with.
Spoon pretty actively. Yeah. So,
yeah.
It's just, it's no big deal. Everyone likes to be warm at night.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Josh, Muir Pond. You got a story about Muir Pond? Is there a flavor about what is it about Muir Pond?
It's home, dude.
Whoa.
Wow, that was
mind blown.
No, Muir Pond is. I don't honestly remember what the exact first like craft beer I drank was. It was either something from Deschutes. It was either Muir Pond from Deschutes or maybe something from Cascade Lakes, which I've never been as big of a fan of as Deschutes. But Muir Pond was like definitely one of the first craft beers that I was drinking on a consistent basis. Like I remember back in college, my parents would come over and it'd be, before I was 21, they'd come over to visit. We'd go to the grocery store and, we'd be walking down the aisle. They'd be like, all right, pick 1 12-pack of domestic and 1 12-pack of craft. And they'd help me sneak it into the dorm room again. And usually it was either Muir Pond or Red Chair from Deschutes and then a case of Corona for the domestic.
Nice.
It's just, it's what I've been drinking forever. whenever I'm homesick, I can always find Deschutes anywhere I go in the world. So I can always just have a Mirror Pond or have a fresh squeeze or something and just, drink home.
Fuck yeah. Cheers to that.
Yeah. It's one of my faves.
Hell yeah.
It is a delightful pale ale. I do not have it in front of me right now, but it is a delightful pale ale.
Yeah. I can definitely say it's probably up there with the consistency thing of Sierra Nevada. Mirror Pond is always Mirror Pond.
I would put Deschutes consistency up there. And when we talk too about other breweries that got us into this, that at one point in time I think were much smaller, obviously, than they are now. They were more craft than they are now. I mean, craft brewing, like anything, is changing. Yeah. And I would put Deschutes and Sierra Nevada in those. They're still making phenomenal beer, but they're making it at such a level and such a production capacity. It, in a weird way, kind of ironically takes them out of that realm. But I mean, Firestone Walker falls into that category for me.
Stone.
Stone. Really, I mean, like I have my Stone to me is like grunge music. My taste for it has kind of fallen off since I was 14 years old. But it is still fucking consistent. No, I mean, actually, I'm going to run with that. But it's still
fucking grunge
consistent
music.
as shit. It's when I want to hear Alice in Chains, I can hear it, and it's still like sludgy as fuck. But Stone was a pioneer brewery that their aggressiveness kind of burnt out my palate over time. Whereas some of these other ones, at least when I would go back to Sierra Nevada, at least when I do reach for a 6-pack of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, it's quaffable. It's really drinkable.
Yeah, and that's I think as as an aspiring professional brewer and pretty, I would say at this point, given all of the changes and updates and whatever the fuck else has been going on in the background with Orion's Belt, a fairly advanced home brewer at this point. It's just, I think it's nice to go back to a beer that's always consistent when at my level there's a lot of room for inconsistencies. So, and it's not something like I don't want to aspire to make one of my beers taste like Sierra Nevada, because what's the point of that? Like, yeah, they put out the recipe and I'm going to try and make a clone of it, but it's not something that like I don't want to like that, or like Myruka or Mirror Ponds. Like, I don't want to make what they're making. I want to make my beer, which if it happens to taste like theirs, okay, doesn't mean it's the same profile or anything else, but it's nice to have that reset button where you're just like, oh yeah, this is and for me also it's like, remember this used to be craft beer.
Totally. Well, and this is what spearheaded craft beer. So
yeah.
These companies are what spearheaded craft beer, and there's a slew of other ones too. I mean, there's Dogfish Head. Honestly, no one's gonna like it, but Sam Adams has pushed craft beer forward massively in their time. Before the sellout, Ballast Point,
was it
Legion,
Flat Tire,
New Belgium.
Yep.
So there's a lot of breweries that because of their growth and because of the need to provide these flagships, now they've become very macro. They are still absolutely pioneers in craft beer. None of us would be sitting around this
we
table
can't take that
them.
away from them ever.
None of them would be sitting. But again, there's the hardest thing about doing anything with this and that topic would be there's too many people to name too.
You can go on and on. We can have it.
We could go forever. We could go forever.
An entire episode where it's just a list.
Saying,
we're just listing beers.
Just having something consistent to go back to. Shit, living in Bend when we're not on lockdown, when there's 30-something or more choices of breweries within a 30-minute drive of my house, like, there's so many different beers to taste, and I want to taste them all, but sometimes it's like, okay, you get home at the end of the night and you just want to know what you're about to sip on.
Totally.
Like, you go out to drink with friends, taste the different beers, try something different, but then when you get home at the end of the night, you're like, fuck it, I want to know exactly what's coming out of that bottle.
And I can't wait for that discussion that we have about how limited the craft beer selection in Montana is.
It is limited right now, and I mean, I know it's not a focus of our episode, but it's limited right now. Obviously, we are doing this podcast spread out a little bit. Josh is in a different area, and we are all, unfortunately, very limited right now. So We are absolutely launching an excited craft beer podcast in a time when it's really tough to get unique craft beer, and it's pretty easy just to get the flagship standards. So, kind of the first forging through the mud it's going to be is we're drinking standards. We're playing the classics right now because it's what we can do, and it's in a weird way, it is kind of nice to come back to some of those roots.
Yeah. See, and I'm going to make a comparison right now that I might also make some people upset with, whatever. But I feel like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale to me is like Nirvana's Nevermind.
I'm not going to fight you on that.
Yeah.
I love your love for, I have mad respect for Sierra Nevada. But you dig them. That's your jam. I'll give them if we're talking grunge, I'll give them Nevermind. Nevermind. Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking like a band that I go back to on a consistent basis, Sierra Nevada Ale would be an equivalent to Incubus for me.
Sure.
On that scale. But if we're talking about like grunge music, like it's like what in your scenario where it's like that nice to go back to every once in a while, like grunge music is like.
It's certainly it is a gold standard pale ale, as is Mirror Pond. They are. I know from a brewing perspective, when I sit down to write a recipe, I think about 3 predominant pale ales, and they are Mirror Pond, Sierra Nevada, and Oscar Blues' Dale's Pale.
Oh, that's such a good beer.
That is a good one.
Those are the standards that I sit down and think about. And again, I don't brew clones. I'm not interested in any way lifting somebody else's work. But from a musical standpoint, or even from a cooking standpoint, you learn by watching other people, and you learn by understanding why they do what they do, and so you work that into your own process and put your own heart behind it, and you hopefully come up with something new and unique. And so that's any time I'm making a pale ale, even if I'm making a hazy pale ale or a fruited pale ale, I still sit down and I'm like, maybe I'm going to get a 6-pack of Dales tonight and just sip it. Kind of think about, because those are, for American brewers, those are the hits. Those are some of the pale ales that, like, this is what this is. Actually, we were joking about it pre-show, but Henry Weinhardt's pale ale for a while, Josh. I drank the shit out of that.
Yeah, well, from my understanding, it was like a much more kind of small thing, and then they went huge and basically become like, another Rainier type thing, but still a little more malty and good beer.
That's, again, from a brewing perspective, like, I'm a hop head, and when I make pales and IPAs now, I know that the West Coast beer nerd perspective on things is to have hops shine through a lot, and we have so many good ones, and I want to make pales and IPAs like that all the time. The pale ale category out here in Montana is still very much those kind of more 90s and early 2000s malt-driven pale ales, or at least very balanced pale ales, probably not showcasing a lot of dry hopping, and more just classic in the character. A lot of grapefruit, a lot of pine, but balanced with that kind of crystally caramel malt backbone. And they're delicious. They rock in terms of sipping, or in terms of quaffable beers.
This is why he's the fucking expert.
Palate shift.
Yep.
So we're also, it's funny to think about, we're tasting beer in 2 different places where people taste beer differently. Like the people that you will associate that with, there's just different style preferences. And as a brewer, we face that as brewers, we face it every day. But this is still a benchmark. Both of these beers that we're drinking are still benchmarks. So
even the beer that you bought, which is probably now it's
at room temp,
a drinkable temperature.
Should we take a quick break so I can go grab some? Cue the music real quick. Do we have a music cue? Do we have a music guy on the show? Who does makeup for this? By the way,
shit! I forgot to call that guy. Hold on.
Here, hold up.
Oh my god!
That was the closest shot of your beer.
Why did you stop? Why did you stop doing that? Once again, everyone, thanks for tuning in to Final Gravity Podcast. Thank you to Josh Duran for providing our instrumental break music. Enjoy this. CJ will be right back.
I'm hoping he's about back because I'm running out of improvisation right now.
he's done now, so we're gonna need you back on stage, CJ. This is
Always
even
gotta have
funnier.
the ukulele close by, you know. You never know when you're gonna need it.
Yeah. Just like, whap.
That's that sweet ukulele.
Gotta love it. Outdoor ukulele. Made here in Bend, Oregon. Fantastic fiberglass ukes.
Nice.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, Dixie, who is an uke player, has a clear plexiglass.
Nice.
Or clear plastic. I don't know if it's necessarily plexiglass, but it's clear plastic. And
they also make
she
one.
takes
It's
it
a
skiing.
fiberglass banjo lele. It's got like a banjo head. Sounds like a banjo, but tuned like a uke.
Yeah, a banjolele.
Yeah. They're fucking dope.
Look at this guy is pushing the fucking limits on this glass. You can kind of see it right in the lower.
No, you can see it. It's right there.
Yeah, it's right. I'm not going to touch it because coronavirus. But right there.
Oh, almost no loss in that beautiful pour. Licensed beer server as well.
And
Didn't mention that in the
let's
thing, but I know
just take a note to compare the color of these two next to each other.
Should I get a glass and?
No, first episode, you can do bottles. You can do bottles.
Yeah.
Eventually, I think we should all have our own pimp chalice.
I was just happening to notice that this is more of like a burnt orange, and that's more of like a copper.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to get that to the video, but that's definitely what's happening there.
Yeah.
Well, this is, I mean, we're stepping up here, and this is not necessarily the beer that got me into craft beer. This is just a beer that, or even a beer company that has made a lot of great beer and continues to do it. This is Founders Centennial IPA. And that was what I grabbed. I think we had talked about maybe grabbing Deschutes Black Peat Porter.
Which
is the first beer I drank with my dad. And I hated it the first time I drank it, but I've always come back to it. And I think I remember talking to you guys too about maybe I was going to bring, and we were kind of figuring out the format, trying to decide what Josh could and couldn't get from a few hundred miles away. But another beer that got me into craft beer was
he's got more availability than we do.
He does, but he's on a little bit of lockdown. You know, we're all
that's true.
emotional,
That's very true. That's very true.
Rogue Dead Guy back in the day was one that turned me on to beer. And I actually, and Josh, you'll appreciate this, I was definitely coming up in Portland beer scene when 10 Barrel was still very new. And the early 10 Barrel Apocalypse IPA and things like that were fantastic. So, again, I'm not necessarily drinking the beer that 100% turned me into craft beer, but I do think the wonderful thing about craft beer is that any good beer continues to keep me enthused about things. So,
you know, both of those two that you just mentioned, Rogue Dead Guy, I was actually just talking with a friend today. First thing I do when quarantine's over, I'm driving out to the coast and going to Rogue Brewery because, you know, as a kid, we went there at least a couple times a year. Dead Guy was like my dad's favorite beer in the world. So that was always around when I was a kid growing up and one of my favorites now. And 10 Barrel, obviously having worked there, some of my fondest memories are, you know, I wasn't 21 at the time. I'd get off work. One of my coworkers would just grab 2 22-ounces and we just go down to the park and have an apocalypse after work.
Fuck yeah.
Good times.
The access to, you know, where you're at, on a good occasion, the access to the number of different breweries and different people creating is insane.
It's amazing.
And I'm very proud to be brewing out in the Flathead Valley where we're at. I'm very proud of everyone else who's brewing out here and the community that's out here doing it. But, you know, Portland, Northern California, and Washington, at least in terms of West Coast goes, they are meccas for just immense amounts of very closely populated, very talented breweries.
Talking about just our regionality or whatever. Yeah. Not like, because there's just like, I mean, we're talking like like Texas, Florida, East Coast.
Our regionality,
you know, like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Austin, Texas has beer coming out that is blowing people's minds. Michigan is a huge beer hub. Wisconsin as well.
Asheville.
Asheville's doing great.
The entire New England area.
The city where I learned how to drink, New Orleans, now has some craft breweries that are just absolutely crushing it. And, you know, back in that day, 15 years ago, there was craft beer, that was like Negra Modelo. down there in the South. That was seriously, craft beer in the South was a Beta. There was a Beta, which is still a nostalgic, great drinking beer, but there was nothing else local.
I hear there's stuff coming out of Georgia.
Georgia's making great beer. There's stuff coming out of Illinois and Indiana. There's stuff coming out of every state. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, New England has risen to prominence, and Vermont beer especially. And
I was thoroughly impressed the last time I was in New Jersey at some of the craft beer that's going on out there. Like, holy shit.
Absolutely.
It's growing all around the country. It's not like, there's been regions that have been known in the past and have really led the way in the craft beer industry. But there's a lot of places that are catching up real fucking quick, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's still just kind of hidden gems. You'd be surprised at so many people who, when you talk about craft beer, don't know the name Hill Farmstead or Maine Beer Company, or places like that are, or Logsden or things like that going back to the West Coast that are, and have been, Ale Apothecary, got to sneak one more in there, that are just making beers that are so unique and so vital to beer's understanding and so honest. And yet, you don't see them on store shelves. Beer is something just like anything creative. Beer is something where you can get a decent run on store shelves, but you really got to want to go out there and see what's happening. And
although they do package, I feel like Wayfinder falls into that category too a little bit.
You guys had a great experience at Wayfinder when you were in Portland this last year, and I'm happy you guys went to that brewery because Ken Davies, who I believe is, I'm getting the name right, Ken Davies is the head brewer there, and he, I believe, used to work for Firestone Walker, and he is a lager guy, and I'm sure you guys drank some German lagers that were outstanding.
We drank several different traditional German style beers, Pilsners, lagers, Weisens, a few others that they had on tap at the time, and I've said this, I said this on the Drink and Think podcast. For me, that was like my I don't know what's the fucking I don't know what the word I'm looking for here is, but
I'm not sure either.
Your unicorn, your white elephant.
Yeah, my unicorn basically.
Your great white buffalo.
Yeah,
great white buffalo. Love it. Doesn't always
also
white.
Yeah,
it could be any kind of color.
It could be any color. Buffalo. Just
or elephant.
Great buffalo. The color doesn't matter. But that was my unicorn, I think.
Lagers in general, or just
no, just like the I don't want to say it was strict, but like the very old school brew style specificness that they stuck to with like to me that's what like good beer is, And then
it's regimented for sure.
Yeah, I also fucking really enjoy the shit out of Cascade because I enjoy sour beers too.
They did a good job with that.
They did a killer job. That's another story for another time. But Wayfinder's got something about like just this clean lagering style that they do that's just, it's so good, and I'm glad that it's a brewery that's actually doing it and not following like these hazy trains and fruited slushy beers. And I watched a guy on Instagram the other day put fucking donuts in his mash, and I started crying.
Yeah, well, again, that would be a rant for a different Plato episode, but you know how I feel about that kind of shit.
Yeah.
No, it is.
That's a too Plato kind of topic.
It's really enduring, though, I think, to see brewers who are still embracing
creativity to a sense.
Creativity, but also respecting tradition. And there's a way to do both, and there's some that just do one or the other. And I tend to fall on the side of, I like to make a lot of things, but there are a few lines you just don't cross. And we'll say that. And with lagering, there is 100 lines you just don't cross.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any lines that you should cross.
Again, conversation for a different time on that.
Yeah,
but it's a very specific process, and it's a modern American brewery and a beer mecca that does a great job of showcasing simplicity. So
and just doing something different,
Sure.
They not only are they making really good lagers, but they're making really good lagers that are different than just your standard stereotypical, this is a lager beer. And in a place that's really well known for IPAs and pale ales and hoppy beers, they're like, fuck that shit. We're going to make just dope-ass lagers.
It was so good. It was so good.
Do we, Josh, do you want to offer any tasting notes on the Meeropon that you're drinking? Noting that it's coming from a bottle, but is it thirst quenching? Is it citrusy? Is it soft? Is it pearly?
I wish I had more.
That's fair. That's a fair thing.
No, it's good. You know, it's kind of one of those pale ales that always just has a little bit of a dryness to it. So it leaves your throat just a little bit dry after you finish a bottle, and a few minutes later you're sitting there. Still kind of have that flavor going in the saliva in your mouth. And, it's definitely not overly hopped. I think it's only like a 40 IBU. Yeah, 40 IBU.
Which is also a Plato 2 topic.
Foreshadowing.
It's just a mellow beer. You know, it's easy drinking. It has kind of that malty flavor to it. And you can session a lot of them because it's only like a 5%. You can just fucking go down to town on them.
Fuck yeah, go down to town. I feel like all the pale ales we've drank, and actually, as I'm crushing into the Centennial IPA right now, they're all malt driven for the style.
Yeah.
This Founder's Centennial is maltier than I remember it. And Centennial is a classic style of hop that is not really one of my favorites.
Are you speaking just like mouthfeel? Because even like the Sierra out of the can, just like it leaves like this light coating on your tongue of like malty. Like,
oh yeah, I'm definitely the Sierra Nevada 2 is definitely a malt balanced pale ale. I mean,
well, no, I'm asking about the Centennial. Do you get that same kind of like residual mouthfeel left over, or is it more of like a clean runoff? See you later kind of.
It's I wouldn't go so far as to call it cloying, but to my palate, if you were to call this Centennial Pale Ale, that'd be just about as right. There's not a bitterness that cleans up the sweetness, and so it just does kind of sit with a little bit of like honeycomb or something like that. I feel like actually out of what and again, I'm not drinking it, what I remember is the Deschutes is the driest of these.
Yeah, it's definitely, you're not wrong in remembering it being dry.
It's dry, and that is something that, as I've gone through beer, I tend to like.
To Plato?
I tend to like, talk about that too. We're going to have a lot of 2 Plato episodes.
Yeah. Well, no, I was saying just that this Meeropon finish at 2 Plato, making a play on actual final gravity.
Oh, we missed it. We'll cut that.
Sorry, that was a little bit too
crash and burn, huh? Man?
For the viewers listening right now, wondering what we're talking about with our 1 Plato, 2 Plato, 3 Plato episodes, and talking about what different conversations are for. Thomas, you want to explain what those are in brewing and why we're relating that to what we're doing with the podcast?
Sure. The Plato's a measurement of the residual sugars left over in your wort when you're done with your beer process that will give you a number that you write down and calculate out later when the beer is done fermenting to essentially come up with your estimated alcohol content for that beer. And I say estimated because nothing is actually all that specifically accurate as it can be. I mean, yeah, there are some really nice instruments out there that'll get you close, but there's still some wiggle room in what the actual final ABV is of most beers. And that's also a topic that we'll get into, that most brewers kind of fudge their numbers a little bit.
We don't talk about that. We don't talk certainly craft brewing allows for a little bit of
so,
I mean, you try and want to be specific, though.
Yeah. So Plato is a measurement of those leftover residual sugars. Like the couple of beers that I made the last couple of days, one opened at 17 Plato, which has a lot of leftover residual sugar, not quite like a 27.5 Imperial Stout. But when you start to get down into like 1, 2, and 3 Plato, you're looking at a very dry finish to your beer, depending on what your starting gravity was. But that's like things tend to be sweeter once you're in like the 2 to 3 to 5 range. I would say is about as far up you can go on that.
Yeah,
and then it starts to get like weird.
It's like so many things in beer, it's dependent upon the other ingredients in it. But essentially, 0 Plato is water. It's aqueous. There's no body to it. And you measure the the density of that, the density of dissolved solids, which in this case usually tend to be sugars in the water.
Sugars, proteins,
right.
Other
based
things,
upon that measurement, you can attain. If you have a starting point and an ending point, you can attain a pretty close estimation of what your alcohol content, based upon what the yeast is eaten up, is going to be. And so the concept I think that we designed was that one Plato was going to be kind of the simplest episode and kind of introductory episode into topics.
So it's not quite watery. We're not diluting anything. There's a little bit of sugar in it.
For those of you brewing saisons out there, I think one Plato is a fantastic place to finish for a clean saison.
There you go.
It's super dry. It's crisp. Yeah. I bet you from what I remember that Deschutes is finishing at about 2. Which would be our slightly more serious episode, but that's still for a pale ale to an IPA. Considered.
It's going to be a little dry. It's going to be a little bit more informative.
Yep.
And then we'll get to 3 Plato, which is going to be a little bit sweeter, but also it's going to be a little bit heavier.
It starts to get juicier. It starts to get heavier. It starts to get richer. As beer tastes have shifted too, we have to remember. I mean, there was a time when porters and stouts finishing at 4 and 5 Plato, even in the common market, were considered normal, and now the taste of brewing has shifted, and my porters finish. I open at 3.5 to 4. My stouts finish at 3. So we're in the market of making dry beer. People tend to like that better than sweet beer, and we can also get into why that's not always true. But anyway, 3 is going to be a topic episode. 3 is going to be a juicier episode and a fuller episode, and we're going to kind of leave some room for us to say some things that hopefully we've educated ourselves about, but we might be kind of going on a limb too, and expressing where we're coming from with each topic too. So,
yeah, I look forward to see how these couple of homebrews now come out. And Josh, you will get some of those, and we will have a tasting episode when this triple set of new IPAs is done with the information that has been graciously given to me and then applied
He's got a cork in a cage. I'm sorry, I'm listening to you, but he's got a cork in a cage. We can see it.
I do look forward to that.
What are you opening, dude?
Episode. Well, I only brought 3 mirror ponds down to the trailer with me when I got set up for this episode, and I drank all 3. So now
during in the last 45 minutes, you drank 3?
I'm on my 3rd beer, and that's not including the one that I drank before I started the podcast.
Yeah, I was halfway done by the time we actually started with one.
I'm like ready to get another one. Where are you?
I've had like 2.5 beers over the course of the podcast.
Well, some of us love beer on this podcast, but some of us.
But yeah, no, I've got a collection of really nice fancy beers in my refrigerator that I stole from my brother when I was helping him move. And this one is by Omegang Brewing. What?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to guess the label. You go ahead.
Oh, yeah. It's Omegang by Cooperstown, or in Cooperstown, New York. Part of their limited edition Game of Thrones series they did a while back. I don't know how long ago it was because these beers have been sitting in my brother's house for a while. But it is a double ale, 8% ABV, and I'm about to get down on this. So
yeah, I want to watch you pour that, and I want to watch you take the first sip, and I want you to tell me what you feel.
Speaking of beers that have been sitting for a while,
it's a good sound. It's a good sound.
I was going to send off an old stout that I had made to a buddy of mine back in December to have him taste or whatever, and it sat. I never got it into the mail because I don't mail beer. If the Postal Service is listening, I don't mail beer.
I do.
And today I was just like, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that, especially with all the changes that have been made to my brewing process and everything. So I decided to crack it open, and it held. I made that beer. Josh, help me out here. When did we throw those cacao nibs in? When was that? November?
Oh gosh.
Because it was here when we did the episode. We all had some, and it was okay.
I still have a bottle of that there.
You do?
Yeah, at the brewery.
Okay.
I think I don't know. November sounds right, but I've got no fucking clue.
Yeah,
honestly.
and it's sat and aged up until today at bottle condition for the last 6 months. I mean, it held carb really well.
I had some, in my time, I had some homebrews I had some homebrews that tasted like shit, and then I had some homebrews that tasted like shit initially, and after time in a bottle, and I mean, I'm not going to go into microbiology and how those beers were probably transformed by things that most modern brewers consider inappropriate, but at least not on this episode. But they got better. There were some things that cellared very, very well. Josh, speaking of cellaring, Gang, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, tell us about it, man. Tell us about it.
I noticed you poured it into
with the most feared saying in High Valerian, take a sip and choose your words wisely, for all men must die and all men must serve. Enjoy rich aromas of caramel and ripe fruit with deep flavors of malty sweetness and fruity esters. Pour slowly, do not disturb yeast sediment, but with vigor to make a luxurious head and free the bouquet.
How can you vigorously slow pour something?
That's like some mixed information I've been given in bed before. Like, go slow but vigorous.
I don't understand. Like, have a seizure? Is
faster but more rhythmic. What? I thought I had a rhythm. That's frustrating. How's the beer though? Less about my bed life and more about the beer.
No, it's nice. It's
you're awful.
It's definitely
sounding bed life.
Got kind of that fruity boutique to it. It's very kind of fruity on the front end and almost like it's like dried apricot on the back end. Oh. Kind of like grabs the back of your tongue with that flavor, and like holds on, but not like the sides of the back of your tongue, like top of the back of your tongue. You know, it's like grabbing on with kind of a dried Double-esque 8% ABV spectacularness.
Well, I'd buy that beer. Sounds great.
I'm probably going to steal another bottle of it from my brother next time I go to his house. So
I think that's a good idea. He doesn't seem like he really gives a shit.
I know he's got one left.
No, and I had the. I mean, we don't have to go into depth about it, but the Bad Santa
from Pelican.
No, it was on tap. My roommate brought it home. The Bad Santa from. Is it New Belgium? No.
Bad Santa is from Pelican Brewing.
Yeah.
Dark Winter Ale.
Yeah, barrel aged.
They do a barrel aged version of it. I'm sure they 12%. Do several. Yeah, sounds about right. I'm pretty sure that's Pelican Brewing.
It was exactly that. It was a dark winter beer. Holy crap! I could only drink like one.
That makes me feel terrible. I finished off 6 packs of that beer before.
I mean, I've got a wine bottle size bottle of 8% ABV beer that will probably be gone pretty quickly.
I wish there was a way to ask the listeners what they were drinking, but I know nobody's listening right now. They'll just be listening soon.
No, I mean...
I wonder what y'all are drinking.
One day we could go live.
We'd like to hear about that.
Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple or anything, reach out to us.
Leave a comment.
Instagram is at Final Gravity Podcast. Facebook is the same thing. Or just leave a comment on the YouTube video if that's where you're at. Let us know what you're drinking. Let us know what beers you like. And give us a little shout out.
Tell us about yourselves.
Who knows, man? Numbers, we might be able to...
details.
We might be able to load up an Instagram live feed one of these days, one of these episodes, and actually go live.
I'm too camera shy for that right now. We need to do like 9 episodes.
I said one day.
One day down the road.
At some point.
I'm very...
I don't want you to get all premature on me.
Yeah, well, I get all premature on a lot of people.
I told you it would be good if my mom didn't walk in.
We could have been talking about anything. There are a lot of things that are premature. Babies. The lift on the stay-at-home. That's right. I just made a COVID-19 reference, y'all.
Well played.
Recent studies show that 1 out of every 3 protesters of the... stay-at-home orders for COVID-19 are just as stupid as the other 2 out of 3.
These fucking idiots. And that will be a topic for Plato 3, I believe, in this set. So we're not going to get into that today, ladies and gentlemen.
That current event.
We will be diving into
We are not going to get into that today.
We're not. I think it's important right off the bat to say that those who are affected by it, whether in the service industry or in the medical profession or just anyone. I mean, people still dealing in the border crisis and shit like that. This has become more real by the day, and this was always real. And there was a lot of people who refused to acknowledge it was real. And we're starting a podcast in the midst of it, and we hope that you all are well. At the end of the day, we hope that anyone who's listening to this is taking care of themselves, if they are able to, taking care of the people around them, even at a distance. It's possible.
Look out for each other. It's
really possible. Look out for each other. And I don't know if we're at the end where I'm not trying to wrap anything up with what we're talking about, but I want to get on here and say that. I want to get on here and say, take care of one another, and be open to be open and understanding of the fact that when we get stressed, people struggle, and sometimes when people struggle, they don't always make the best decisions, but they don't make bad decisions to be malicious. They make bad decisions because they are stressed as well. And compassion, even if at 6 feet distance, is still a thing. And understanding, even at 6 feet of distance, is still a thing. So.
None of us have ever been through anything like this before, so we're all just figuring it out.
And we're starting a podcast. We don't know how to do that in the first place. None of us have ever done that. Oh, we did do that once. But we didn't do it during this time, so we're trying. We're trying every night. Every night. Are we going to do this every night? 31 days a week, right? 31 days a month.
31 days a week?
31. That's a Beatles song.
No, that's 8 days a week.
Point being, we're going to figure out how to do a great beer podcast in the midst of this time, and I hope we are also able to convey some compassion and
bring a little bit of brevity to your day,
brevity, and maybe even some good conversation and entertainment too. Maybe we get some intelligence out of this too, because there hasn't been a whole lot of that following the situation around. So, well,
thank you, CJ, for the closing notes on the first episode of the Final Gravity podcast. Again, I am this evening's host, Cuzzin T. I am joined by my good friends, the Groovy Bear, CJ.
Hello.
The expert, the knowledge, the brains, the Viking Peaches, the fun, the stoke,
the life force,
the chief of Cofitos.
Chief of Cofitos, always.
And Cuzzin T, the inappropriate jokes, the burps, and the awfully sarcastic, badly timed jokes.
And creepy voices, too. Creepy voices.
That's what I do.
All right. Signing off. Plato 1.
Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
Peace.
We'll see you on Plato 2 next time.